tension and uncertainty on the rise across the United States as people go to the polling stations. We can cross now to the US Studies Centre, a research centre at the University of Sydney in Australia, to speak to Mr. Jared Mondschein. Mr. Mondschein, thanks for your time. We're seeing there an unprecedented amount of early voting, but it appears an unprecedented amount of tension as well, no, in the US for this vote. Many say they're expecting violence.
That's right. Yeah. The majority of Americans are expecting violence, which is a pretty worrying trend. And on top of that, we at the U.S. Study Center have done some polling of U.S. voters, and we found that only 31% of Biden supporters would accept a Trump reelection. So that's less than a third of Biden supporters would accept a Trump reelection, whereas 45%, less than half of Trump voters would accept a Biden win. So you're going to have a lot of angry people regardless of the outcome, and it's sort of unprecedented in modern American history.
And we've already been seeing, even before the ballot boxes, the physical ones opened, we've seen a host of legal challenges. It does seem hard to imagine, but could we see a US president refusing to leave office?
Yeah, fortunately, there is some time. It's important to note that the election is in November, but the inauguration is in January. So the last time we had a contested election for a prolonged period of time was back in 2000 with George W. Bush against Al Gore. And that took a few months. But still, by Inauguration Day, everything was sorted. Al Gore had conceded defeat. And it was due to the Supreme Court ruling in that decision. It was based on Florida back in 2000. So that could happen again, but I think there is enough of a lead time between the election and the inauguration to get that done. And I think there are also some major lessons learned from 2000 about how to perhaps do that a bit better and more efficiently.
Of course, one of the big questions going into this election is the amount of mail-in votes. And that's what Donald Trump is, pointing the finger of concern towards. But mail-in voting is quite a standard practice in US elections, is it not?
It completely is. There are some states that have mail-in voting for everywhere. And it's important to note that there's no sort of federal system for voting. Each state decides on their own. Some states, you can vote, like myself, I'm overseas, and I can vote in my home state online. I mail in my ballot through my email. Other states make you send it in physically. It completely varies from state to state. And states like Florida, for instance, where the president himself voted, has a pretty robust mail-in voting system, and the president took advantage of it this year.
Florida, of course, one of those many swing states. I mean, is this election is the part of the course in the US coming down to just a key number of battleground states? And if so, give us a flavour of the ones you see as key.
Yeah, I think timing in this election matters more than ever. There's been some reports that President Trump wants to call the election if it looks like he is ahead, regardless of whether that is officially certain or not. Whether the election officials declare that officially or not, he doesn't seem to matter. But that's a report, and that's not fully confirmed because he's also denied that. I think in terms of key states, the timing, as I said, is important. So we want to look at the East Coast, and you look at Florida. If Joe Biden does carry Florida, then basically Donald Trump has to carry every other swing state. He really does not have much to lose in terms of the electoral college. So he would have to win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, all these states where it's looking pretty favorable to Joe Biden right now. Now, if President Trump wins Florida, then his path to victory is a bit easier. It really comes down to, similar to 20 years ago in 2000, Florida has a huge role in this election. And then after that, if President Trump wins Florida, and then he wins Pennsylvania as well, also on the East Coast, that is looking pretty worrying for Joe Biden. Those two states I'm focused on more than any other because they really could go either way at this point, and they have so many electoral college, so much value in the electoral college that if they both go to one candidate, then it looks like the election is close to decided.
Okay, so some clear key states to focus on. When it comes to the issues that are foremost in voters' minds, how do you see it? It appears that COVID on the one hand and the economy on the other seems to be what matters most to people.
Yeah, this election is not necessarily the most policy focused election. It really from the Democratic side has been a referendum on President Trump and his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. They are not really putting together forward very forcefully a policy agenda. Joe Biden, if you look at his tagline in his rallies, he talks about restoring the soul of America. That's not exactly a policy position. There's not a lot of detail there. It's just a sort of value judgment. Whereas President Trump has stayed with his "Make America Great Again," and the fact that he was able to get he believes he was able to get the economy going pretty well before the pandemic, and that the pandemic was really not his fault. They're talking past each other at this point, and not really looking at how the other or countering as much as they are just trying to more forcefully make their own positions in terms of the final days of the election.
Finally, of course, a lot of focus on the US presidential election, but there are Senate elections also taking place. Do you think we could see a shakeup on that front?
I think we really could. The last polling I saw was in the 70s in terms of the likelihood that the Democrats take the majority in the Senate. It's important to note that there are 100 seats in the Senate, and right now the Republicans have just a couple seats. I think 3 seats advantage over the Democrats, and it was due to that 3-seat advantage that they were able to get the Supreme Court justices that they wanted, that they were able to get the tax legislation passed that they wanted, and a number of other key legislation in this Trump administration. If the Republicans are to lose that, and if Joe Biden does win the White House, then you could really look at least for 2 years as there being some opportunities for some major legislative victories for Biden. Back in 2008, it's important to note that Barack Obama also won the Senate and the House as well as the White House, and he was able to get the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, done. And that was a huge legislative victory. And unfortunately for their administration, they didn't win any other legislative victories in many ways because the Republicans took back control. So those first 2 years, if there's a blue wave and Biden wins the White House and Dems win the Senate and Congress as well, you could look for some major changes in America.
Okay, Mr. Jared Mondschein from the US Study Centre at the University of Sydney. Thanks indeed for your time.